It struck me with the force of a revelation, a sudden, illuminating clarity. This, this was no longer a mere expression of gratitude, a polite acknowledgement of hospitality. This had transcended that, evolving into something deeper, something shared, something potent and unspoken. And when I finally lifted my gaze, the way they watched me, the intensity in their eyes, conveyed everything. They were poised, ready to venture further than my wildest imaginings had ever dared to roam. Before we embark on this journey, if you're a cherished regular to our haven, please do grace us with a like and subscribe. And if this is your first foray into our world, a heartfelt welcome. I sincerely hope you find delight in what unfolds. Now let us begin. The remnants of our shared meal still grace the table, a testament to convivial company, yet none of us had stirred for a considerable while. I leaned back, the stem of my wineglass cool against my fingers, observing the subtle yet undeniable shift in the way Mark and Bill were regarding me. It wasn't merely polite attention anymore, not just the easy camaraderie of newfound friends. That gaze. It had transformed somewhere between the emptying of the second bottle and the landing of the third, artfully delivered compliment. "You know," Bill remarked, stretching with a deliberate, almost theatrical casualness, "it's rather astounding that a woman like you is living out here all alone." Mark nodded in solemn agreement, swirling the last amber dregs of his drink. "Seriously, you orchestrated that entire move with more competence than most blokes I know. And then you conjured up this incredible dinner. I mean, honestly, is there anything you don't do?" A slow, deliberate smile unfurled on my lips. I let them look. Indeed, I wanted them to. "Oh, there are plenty of things," I murmured, rising from my chair and reaching for their now empty plates, my shirt, as if with a will of its own, pulled just taut enough across my chest for both of them to register the subtle shift. I made no move to adjust it. "But I'm diligently working on rectifying that." Mark let out a low, appreciative laugh, his eyes trailing my movements with an unnerving focus. "No way someone just let you go. You must have been the one to walk." I offered no verbal reply, merely turned my back, allowing my hips to sway with a fraction more emphasis than strictly necessary as I carried the plates to the kitchen. I could feel their collective gaze, a tangible heat that seemed to raise the temperature of the room. When I returned, I didn't resume my seat. Instead, I leaned languidly against the doorframe, wineglass still in hand, observing them with an air of detached amusement, as if I were idly weighing which of them would be the first to crack under the mounting tension. "I'll be perfectly honest," I said, my voice a low, deliberate purr. "It's been quite some time since I've had two such attentive gentlemen sitting at my table making me feel quite this noticed. Then someone, or rather several someones, have been making some egregious errors in judgment," Bill declared, his voice a low rumble. "Monumental ones," Mark added, his gaze unwavering. I took a long, slow sip of my wine. My pulse was already a frantic hummingbird beneath my skin. It wasn't just the wine. It was the way they were both leaning in now, ever so slightly, as if I'd finally, inadvertently, cracked open a door they'd been patiently, eagerly, waiting to stride through. "Perhaps," I mused, my voice soft yet carrying an undeniable weight, "I was merely waiting for the right pair. You know, the kind that works exceptionally well together." That remark, that landed. Bill leaned back, a subtle, almost imperceptible movement, but his eyes remained locked on mine, a burning intensity in their depths. Mark set his glass down with a soft, deliberate clink, a slow, predatory grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. Their ensuing silence was more eloquent than any words. They weren't retreating. They were waiting, poised. I pushed myself off the wall, each step measured, deliberate, as I walked towards them, allowing each footfall to stretch the already taut moment even thinner. I paused between them, my fingertips brushing with feigned casualness against the back of Mark's neck as I passed. He didn't flinch, merely let out a slow, deliberate breath, as if I'd just stolen something vital from him. Then I turned to Bill, moving closer, closer than strictly necessary. "Are you two gentlemen interested in dessert?" I inquired, my voice a low, husky whisper. "Or are you quite full?" Bill's gaze dropped inevitably to my lips. "I believe," he murmured, his own voice thick with unspoken desire, "we might just have room for one more delicacy." I smiled, a slow, knowing, utterly predatory smile. And then I kissed him. His lips parted instantly against mine, eager, almost desperate, as if he'd been holding back a torrent of desire all evening, and finally, no longer had to. His hand slid to my waist, pulling me in with a quiet, ravenous hunger that made the very air between us hum, thrum, vibrate with unspoken promises. I kissed him harder, deeper, wanting to taste the full measure of his wanting. Mark didn't utter a single word, but I felt his eyes on us, a silent, watchful presence, waiting his turn. Bill's shirt was soft, yielding beneath my questing fingers, but I wasted no precious time with polite preliminaries. My hands moved with a swift, practiced urgency, slipping buttons free with practiced ease while our mouths remained locked in that intoxicating embrace. The fabric gave way with a soft, sighing whisper, and I pushed it off his broad shoulders, allowing it to slither unheeded to the floor. My palms skimmed across his chest, encountering warm, firm skin, strong, masculine lines. I felt him exhale, a ragged, shuddering breath, as if he'd been holding it captive since the very moment I'd first opened my door to them hours before. He looked down at me, his eyes wide, dazed, as if I were methodically, exquisitely, undoing him piece by piece. And I was. I kissed my way down his torso now, slower, more deliberately, my lips tracing the intoxicating path I intended to claim as my own. My hands moved lower in tandem, tugging, teasing, until there was nothing left between us, no barriers, no impediments. He stood utterly still, his jaw tight, his eyes following my every motion with an almost disbelieving intensity, as if he couldn't quite fathom that this was truly happening. I knelt before him then, allowing my lips to continue the evocative narrative my hands had already so eloquently begun. He let out a sound, not loud, not clearly articulated, just a raw, guttural breath that caught on the very edge of a word and never quite managed to escape. His hand found my hair, fingers threading through the strands in slow, unsteady, almost reverent strokes. I didn't rush. I took my time, allowing every deliberate motion, every lingering caress to speak for me, to convey the depth of my own burgeoning desire. When I chanced to glance upwards, I caught Mark watching us, his lips slightly parted, his chest rising and falling with a rapid, shallow rhythm. My mouth didn't cease its ministrations, but I held his intent stare and offered him a slow, knowing, utterly wicked smile. That, it seemed, was all the invitation he required. He stood slowly, purposefully, and walked over to us, pausing beside us, close enough for me to feel the radiating heat of his body. I adjusted my position, still kneeling between them, shifting just enough to bring one hand to rest on Mark's thigh, while my lips remained devotedly engaged with Bill. The pace shifted then, becoming less careful, less calculated, more primal, more instinct than conscious thought, as I offered each of them a taste of what they so silently, so desperately craved. I allowed Mark to feel the echoes of what I'd just shared so intimately with Bill, then turned my attention back, a predatory grin playing on my lips, that seemed to suck the very air from the room. A kiss here, a lingering stroke there. Hands moving, lips following, their ragged breaths tangling, mingling with mine in the charged atmosphere. They stood over me, poised, waiting, barely steady, each silently, eagerly offering more. With every passing second that I continued, I soaked it in, reveled in it. I craved more. I was far past the point of patient waiting, and it was Bill who finally moved first. His hands came to my waist, firm, sure, possessive. In one fluid, decisive motion, he pulled me upright, his mouth meeting mine midair, a collision of desperate hunger. Before I could even begin to catch my breath, he swept me into his arms as if I weighed nothing, as if I were already, undeniably, his to carry. He didn't utter a word, just turned towards the inviting expanse of the couch and began to walk. Bill sat him with a force that spoke of barely contained urgency, pulling me down with him as if he couldn't bear to relinquish his hold, not even for a moment. His hands remained firmly on my waist, his fingers twitching slightly against my skin as I hovered above him, still caught in the intoxicating, pulsating rhythm of what we had just begun. Behind me, I heard Mark move, his steps slow, deliberate, purposeful. He didn't speak, but the sound of his approach was all the signal I needed. Then I felt him. His hands touched my hips first, warm, certain, grounding. He guided me forward, and I followed without a flicker of hesitation, resting my palms against Bill's broad chest, my arms braced where they held me steady, secure. My body folded into him as his hands steadied me, one sliding up the length of my back, the other anchoring me low, possessively. Mark's breath found me first, low, hot, and close against my skin, and then his mouth followed, his lips drawing an incendiary path down my spine, leaving a trail of searing heat wherever they passed. He didn't rush, he teased, he savored, but I was already arching, already pressing back into him. My own need a burning, undeniable inferno, too bright, too intense to remain still. He shifted behind me, one hand guiding me higher as his body aligned perfectly with mine. Then his grip tightened. He closed the space between us, measured, quiet, deliberate, until the tension coiling within me pulsed like a desperately held breath. My breath caught in my throat, a sharp, ragged gasp, as the weight of him settled behind me. A potent, undeniable presence. I gasped into Bill's chest, my fingers curling, clutching where I held him. And Bill, bless him, stroked my back with a soothing, steadying rhythm, as if he were gently guiding me through the imminent glorious crash. Mark didn't rush. He moved with an unwavering purpose, measured, focused, every movement deliberate, precise, like a slow, inexorable tide drawing me further and further out to sea. I met him, chased him, hungry for the closeness, the intoxicating build-up, the way each shared breath deepened the already exquisite ache. Bill's hand slipped into my hair, his fingers tangling, gently tugging. The other gripped my waist, a firm, possessive anchor. He breathed against my cheek, whispering things I barely caught, words that dissolved into sensation, things I didn't need to intellectually understand to feel resonating deep within my core. I don't know how long it lasted, that timeless, suspended interlude. I only knew with an absolute, unshakable certainty that I didn't want it to stop. But before I could even begin to form the words to beg for more, Mark's breath hitched, a sharp, sudden intake, and he pulled away. I felt the searing heat of him fade, the air around me shift, cool, and then Bill opened his arms, a silent, irrefutable invitation. I turned into him, climbing onto his lap, slowly, deliberately, each movement a conscious act of surrender. My knees sank into the plush cushion on either side of him, and I guided myself down onto him with a breath that trembled all the way through me, a visible tremor that shook my entire frame. My hands found his chest, fingers splaying wide, anchoring me as I lowered myself inch by agonizing, exquisite inch. He groaned into my neck as I finally settled fully into his lap, our bodies melding, becoming one. I paused there, just breathing, just shaking, before I began to move. I set the pace, grounded, hungry, insatiable. Each rise and fall deliberate, measured, as if I could somehow write him, etch him, permanently into my skin. His hand slipped beneath my shirt, trailing a path of fire up my back, pulling me closer, tighter, with every answering motion from below. I heard Mark before I saw him, his breath steady, even, tantalizingly near. Then he climbed onto the couch beside us, a silent, potent presence. I reached for him automatically, instinctively, my mouth already parting in anticipation, one hand finding him, moving in perfect rhythm with the rest of me. I leaned forward into him as Bill held me steady from behind, his body a firm, unyielding anchor, my lips pressing to Mark's skin with a raw, desperate hunger that didn't wait for, nor require, an invitation. He cupped my face in his hands as I leaned into him, his own breath catching in ragged, uneven waves. Below, Bill groaned, a low, guttural sound, and pulled me down harder, his hips guiding the way our bodies moved together, a primal, intoxicating dance. I matched them both, my body shifting, yielding, responding, our breaths shared, our pulses racing in frantic unison, the lines between us, between our individual desires, blurring, dissolving into a single, shared conflagration. We moved in perfect, exquisite sync, breaths tangled, pulses rising, boundaries utterly, gloriously gone, drawn inexorably into the same rising, consuming storm. And I wasn't done, not even close. I didn't even register the precise moment the room fell silent. It wasn't the peaceful, tranquil kind of quiet. It was the charged, electric kind. The kind that buzzed, thrummed, vibrated in the very air just before something, someone, inevitably gave in, surrendered. Bill was still beneath me, his palms resting possessively on my hips, his breath warm, moist against my collarbone. I was moving slow and steady now, chasing every soft sound he made, every subtle shift in his body. Then I became aware of Mark behind me again, closer, steadier, a coiled spring of anticipation. I turned my head slightly, just enough to catch the intense, focused look in his eyes. There was no hesitation there, no uncertainty, only a raw, unwavering focus. Hunger tempered, just barely, with an ironclad control. Bill looked up at me at the exact same moment. I caught it. Something silent, something unspoken, that passed between them like a covert signal. An understanding that transcended words, and then they acted. Bill shifted his grip, grounding me, holding me firmly in place. Mark's fingers returned to my waist, his touch sure, careful, utterly ready. My breath hitched before anything else even had a chance to. I froze, not out of fear, never fear, but because my body, with its own innate wisdom, already knew, already anticipated what was to come, and it wanted it, desperately, badly. Mark pressed forward, his chest brushing against my back, his voice a low, husky murmur near my ear. Breathe. I did. A deep shuddering inhalation, he aligned himself with me. Slow, deliberate, unhurried. The pressure came fast, intense, building with every passing second. He drew closer, occupied me yamai more fully. My hands clutched at Bill's shoulders, my nails digging unconsciously into his skin, my lips parted, A sound escaped, a raw, primal whimper drawn from somewhere too deep, too elemental to name. Bill murmured something soothing, something I couldn't quite catch, his arms holding me steady, a reassuring presence, while Mark adjusted himself behind me, his movements precise, knowing. And then they were both there. One anchoring me, a solid, unshakable foundation. One answering the deep, insatiable ache within me. My body suspended between them, folded, surrounded, utterly, gloriously overcome. They gave me a beat, maybe two, a moment of exquisite, almost unbearable anticipation. Then they began. Not fast, not rough, just enough. Enough to leave me feeling weightless, adrift on a sea of sensation. They slipped into a rhythm that wasn't polished, wasn't rehearsed. It was better. It was real, authentic. One eased forward while the other slowed. A perfect, intoxicating counterpoint. Then they switched. Then, for a breathtaking moment, they moved together, in perfect, devastating unison, just enough to turn my breath sharp and send a dizzying spiral of heat spinning through me. I couldn't follow. My mind went blessedly, wonderfully quiet. My fingers searched blindly, desperately for purchase. Bill's chest, Mark's wrist, the unforgiving edge of the cushion beneath my knees. I reached for anything, anything to ground me, but there was no grounding to be had when they had me like this, suspended, consumed. The way they worked together, it wasn't about force, about dominance. It was about timing, exquisite balance, a steady, inexorable draw, and a grounding, reassuring press. Every shared inhale seemed to pull me further, deeper, until all I could feel, all I was aware of, was the precipice, the brink of something monumental, waiting, yearning, to shatter. Bill's mouth was at my neck now, his exhale hot, searing against my skin, his grip unrelenting, possessive. Mark's voice again, a low, encouraging murmur. "You're doing so good." And I believed him. I felt it in the way he instinctively gave space when I needed it, only to masterfully rebuild the tension mere seconds later. I was burning. A sheen of dampness spread along my back, my skin slick, hypersensitive. My legs trembled so violently I barely registered the moment when they lifted me slightly, adjusting my position, deepening the connection. Tighter, closer, more. My spine arched between them, a taut bow of exquisite tension, their bodies tightening, closing in around me until I couldn't shift, couldn't move, could only feel. And I felt everything, the silken slide of their touch, the intoxicating cadence of their shared breath, the undeniable searing heat between us, tension, skin, nothing left hidden, nothing left unexposed. I was trembling. I was coming undone. I didn't speak, didn't call out their names until I did. "Don't stop," I whispered, my voice barely more than a breath of air. "Come, please." And then it happened. That final, cataclysmic moment when everything inside me, every last vestige of control, of resistance, simply gave way. I was theirs, utterly, completely, irrevocably theirs. My body jolted between them, overcome by something I couldn't hold back, couldn't contain. My head dropped, my hands slipped, and I surrendered to it, to them, to the overwhelming, consuming tide. The sounds that escaped me then weren't delicate, weren't demure. They rushed out, shaky, raw, utterly, gloriously unfiltered. They stayed with me, holding each movement, each shudder, until I gave in completely, until the last tremor had subsided. Bill supported my hips, his hands strong, steady. Mark steadied my shoulders, his touch reassuring, and together they brought me through every crashing, exhilarating wave. I collapsed into them, breathless, undone, utterly spent. And they were still there, constant, grounded, unwavering, like the whole world had narrowed, condensed, focused down to just us, to that single incandescent moment. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. That moment, that shared transcendent experience, stayed with me. Not just what they did, but how they did it. No hesitation, no waiting, no artifice, just complete, unadulterated surrender all the way through.
Thank you for listening. Please share your thoughts, like this video if you found it helpful, and subscribe for more.